Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hey guys, happy Friday. It's me, your girl, Elena Grace, and you're listening to another episode of I've Been Thinking. So this week, I told you last week we got a little bit out of order because the book that I had ordered for this month's book of the month did not come in as soon as I thought it was going to. That's my bad. Whatever. But I really wanted the physical copy of the book. And if you've ever seen this book, you'll understand why. And the problem was it's not technically available in the US yet. So I had to order it from the UK and have it shipped. But today we're talking about Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. And I just thought this was a perfect book for Women's History Month, International Women's Day, all of those things that have been floating around. I wanted to share this with you all because honestly, I think it's really good. Okay. Florence Given, if you don't know who she is a British illustrator, a writer, a feminist social activist, and an influencer on social media. She's known for her iconic to her slogan designs, which address social issues, namely surrounding sexuality and femininity. And then in 2020, she published her first book, Women Don't Owe You Pretty. So Florence is a really cool girl, I think, and her vibe is just really cool. She's very 1970s aesthetic. She just lives life. She enjoys life. She lives life. And she spends her time serving herself, but also serving others, which I think is a really awesome way to spend your time. And I think, honestly, I don't think that she would see it that way, maybe. Because she's very serious about, you deserve to be reciprocated for the things that you give to others, that kind of thing. But I think that what she gives, the inspiration and the insight and all of these things that she gives to others is so much more than she'll ever return. So I'm really excited to share this with you guys, okay? Now, this book is so I'll read you what it says on the back. It says, it is the ultimate book for anyone who wants to challenge the outdated narratives supplied to us by the patriarchy. It will teach you how to protect your energy, tell you that you are the love of your own life, and that today is a wonderful day to dump them. Florence is here to remind you that you owe men nothing, least of all pretty. Now, this is an incredible segue for, like, an incredible first book for someone who is just starting out learning about feminism or learning about themselves and these things that they've maybe always felt and haven't known how to put words to or haven't known how to explain. I mean, incredible for that. And I want to say that I read a lot of, well, not a lot, but I read a handful of reviews from different people who were like, oh, this doesn't really add anything to the feminist narrative. It's not like it's groundbreaking feminist theory, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't matter. It is an awesome way of putting all of these things that, yeah, we could take a women's studies class or a feminist theory class or whatever, but this boils it down to the essence, to easy to understand situations and explanations for anybody who is maybe already a feminist and they want to read something that they enjoy and affirms it, or somebody who maybe needs to grow into that. I actually really want to get, when this becomes available in the US, I'm going to get a copy and give it to my mom and then make her read it and then make my cousin read it as well, because I think that they would both enjoy this more than they realize. The word feminism has such a negative conscription, and it's really unfortunate because there are crazy, shitty people who have given it that, but then it's also that people in power don't want the average woman to be empowered, so they're going to give these negative denotations to anything that empowers a woman. So there's a lot going on, but let's get into the book before I ramble more. So the book starts with Florence, or Floss, as she often calls herself in the book, warning the reader that becoming more aware of these things and how people we love are varying degrees of problematic can lead us to not enjoying people that we've cared about. Like, the realizations that we might come to could cause us to cut people from our lives even, you know? And the things that we learn from this book could also cause us to feel guilt over things that we've done in the past, or maybe cause us to rethink ourselves and our whole approach to life, which is hard for a lot of people. But basically, you have to humble yourself and know that if you ever want to grow or be any kind of a better person, like, these are things that you're going to have to deal with. Now, Florence also discusses, super importantly, she lays this out in the beginning, that for women in general, performing femininity and fitting into a lot of gender roles is a survival technique. And it's a way for women to not have to worry about dealing with things like dealing with people giving you shit and dealing with people, making assumptions about you that might not be true. You just do what's expected and then maybe you'll be safe. But maybe you'll even be given opportunities that other people who don't choose to conform won't have. But the question that we should be asking ourselves, that Florence kind of poses in the first two or three chapters, is whether or not that's worth it. Whether or not it's worth it to give up a part of ourselves just to survive. So I'm going to talk about this book as a few different major topics, okay? And I'm not going to read the book to you. I'm sorry, Allison. I'm not going to tell you everything that she talks about. You have to read this book yourself, okay? Number one rule. If you listen to this episode, I want you to go buy this book when it becomes available in the US in April. This is not sponsored. This is just #facts. I'm so sorry for that. I don't know what happened to me. Okay, so Major topics. You are the love of your own life, but also sometimes you need to break up with yourself. So Florence writes that one of the most radical things you can do is love yourself as you are, especially if that is enough for you to be satisfied without a romantic love. She explains that in a capitalist society, and at first when I heard this, or when I read this rather, I think that a lot of people lately have been throwing out like in a capitalist society, in capitalism, blah, blah, blah. But no, this is like, I had skepticism going into this statement, but it is like, it's spot on, okay? She explains that in a capitalist society where our flaws and insecurities are preyed upon in such a way that we as women are told that self-care involves hundreds of dollars worth of products or treatments. Even shopping is widely considered a form of female self-love or self-care because, treat yourself, right? But it's not the same for men. For Adam, self-care is going to the gym to make himself strong and healthy, or playing video games, or hanging out with his friends. For my dad, self-care is working out, or having a Smirnoff Ice, or calling the boys, or watching a B movie, or hanging out in the hot tub with a screwdriver. The drink, not the tool. These are things that may involve some money or some investment in some, way. But typically males are not told, hey, you need this act of self-care to be beautiful. Or, hey, you have to use this product if you love yourself. Whereas that is more so how it's marketed towards women. So this is why loving yourself as you are, and that doesn't mean that you can't want other things or want to change or grow or whatever, but just loving yourself and not needing validation from outside of yourself is radical because it's breaking the norm. And it is also essential. But then the next chapter is about breaking up with yourself. So it's kind of confusing at first. But, I just learned to love myself. So why would I let that go? Why do I need to break up with myself? But that's not quite it. So in order for us to grow and improve and change in the best ways, we have to come to an understanding that we deserve better than what we're giving ourselves. Especially because sometimes we get into these self-sabotage cycles, or maybe we act bad and then we don't hold ourselves accountable, or we don't let other people, friends, critique us and hold us accountable. I do that sometimes where I don't want Allison to tell me how bad I acted, but I did. I did act bad. Or I don't want Taylor to be mad at me, even though I know I acted bad. I would just want to say, oh no, it's fine. Then she's going to be mad at me, and then that's her holding me accountable, But we like to blame our suffering or our misadventures on sources outside of ourselves rather than believe that we would choose suffering for ourselves. But in reality, a lot of that comes from the toxic people that we don't enjoy, but we choose to keep them around us, maybe. So taking accountability for this and using it as an opportunity for growth can allow us to understand so much about who we are and why we do things. And then we can thank that version of ourselves and we can move on to the next version through growth. Okay, another hot topic in the book, not the store, is to date or not to date. And I thought this was so relatable, okay? So knowing what you want and what you don't want from life is an essential realization. And this doesn't necessarily mean like what you want to be when you grow up, because I still haven't figured that out either. I still to this day say I want to be Jimmy Buffett. I want to be a perpetual beach bum. But knowing what you want means knowing the kind of life you want to live, what kind of people you want around you, the kinds of energy you enjoy, that kind of thing. So Florence writes in this chapter that if you want a partner, not that you need a partner, but if you want a partner, going on as many dates as you're comfortable with a wide variety of people, is an awesome way to help you understand what you enjoy in a partner, what you can't stand, and ultimately the kind of person that you would enjoy spending your time with. And I know that personally I did this, and I realized so much about what and who I wanted. And, that was a really awesome thing that I came to the conclusion of, because when I met Adam, I knew that he checked off those boxes that I had written for myself. And they were boxes that I wrote over time, not a checklist that I made when I was 16 and naive. It was a set of, I enjoy this, I enjoy this, I enjoy this, I don't want this, that I had written over time and over heartbreak and over many, many, many dates and many, many, many random numbers at the bar. And I realized what I wanted and what I didn't. So when I met Adam, I knew that he fulfilled those things in me. And I have never doubted that. And before you say anything, no, this does not counteract the whole loving yourself first situation, because this kind of realization can only happen well, it can only happen correctly if you do love yourself the most first, because then you won't accept the love and the attention that is less than what you deserve. So often we have these less than perceptions of ourselves, and that's why we get into cycles with shitbags and jerks, because deep down there's a part of us that doesn't understand that we deserve better than that, but we do. So Florence and I both are going to encourage you, go on dates, but remember that you don't owe anybody anything just for eating dinner together. You do not owe them your loyalty. You're not dating just because you went on one date. You're not exclusive. You don't owe them your body, and you don't even owe them a kiss. Perhaps a thank you, if it went well. And by doing these things, you'll find out what you like and what you don't. And that's really important. Next, refuse to find comfort in other women's flaws. Now, y'all, this is as simple as it can be. We should not tear each other down. We're not competing to be top woman, and helping another woman does nothing to take away from our own, from what we have. And this is something that I work really hard to overcome, because I always feel like there's a competition. I'm a very competitive person in a lot of ways, and I shouldn't be a lot of the time. Because I'm very aware that a lot of the ways I'm competitive are very negative. So someone asked me recently for some advice on something, and my immediate thought was, I shouldn't tell her the truth, the whole truth, because what if she's trying to do the exact same thing as me, and she might be more successful than I am. But then I took a step back. I realized what I had just said in my brain, and I took a step back from myself, and I knew that she didn't deserve that. She was coming to me from a place of trust. So I gave her my honest answer. And guess what? No, she was not going to be competing against me anyway. So if I had lied, I would have just been a dick. I wouldn't have been helping myself, and I certainly wouldn't have been helping her. But I'm really thankful that I realized that, and I saw that in myself and made a different choice. And I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen and everybody, to do the same if you ever find yourself feeling that same way. Because the thing you realize is that not helping someone doesn't just leave them at a disadvantage, it leaves you at a disadvantage as well. Okay, next. Stop scrolling in the mornings. Now, this is something I've been working on for a while, since way before I even bought this book, actually, and then had to wait what felt like forever to receive it because, It had to be shipped from the UK. But I really did well at this for a while, and I've kind of fallen back. But I mean, I cannot say enough how incredible it felt when I was not on my phone first thing in the morning. I did that this morning, actually. I've barely looked at my phone today, and it feels incredible. It feels like you can get so much more done in the day. Florence tells us, quote, "We all have a void we're trying to fill, and social media assists in widening that void." Social media doesn't fill us with anything. She actually backs this up with a quotation from one of Facebook's co-founders about how social media is literally designed to be addictive. And obviously, the people who profit from it want us to be obsessed and to not be able to get away from it. But they literally, like, the unpredictability of how we don't know how people are going to react to something we post. So we like obsessively check it, or maybe we obsessively check to see what someone in particular is posting. That unpredictability is, that doesn't feel like a real word at this point, is what makes us addicted to it, right? But we have to keep in mind that these are highlight reels and they don't represent reality like 99.9% of the time. And it's all a lot for us to handle emotionally. So scrolling as soon as we open our eyes is like the point that she's making is that as soon as we open our eyes and we're scrolling through this ultra curated version of someone's life, it's just giving our brain a lot of comparison to deal with. And that's not a good way to start a day. You know, it's not healthy. It's not good on us. And it sets us up for this idea of, well, I have to live up to that standard when in reality, that person isn't living up to that standard. You know, I'm a big fan of social media and how it can be helpful, but I also realize it can be very detrimental. And this is a key way. So Florence and I both are going to encourage you. Don't get on Instagram as soon as you wake up. Don't get on Facebook as soon as you wake up. You can give it a rest for a little while. Next, this chapter is called Maybe It's a Girl Crush or Maybe You're Queer. And Florence poses a really interesting dichotomy in this chapter. And I think it's really important, and that's why I brought it to you all as one of the major topics of the book, right? She says, the sexualization of women's bodies is so normalized that it made me question whether loving a woman outside of her objectification was valid enough. That if I didn't objectify women and talk about them the way cis men did, that I couldn't possibly be queer. How heterifying. Now, first of all, I have to say, Florence says heterifying all the time, like terrifying but hetero combined, and it kills me to my core in the absolute best way. I think it is the funniest possible word that could have ever been made up. It is hilarious. But more importantly, the idea that women are so inherently objectified that a queer person questions their sexuality because they are not objectifying women enough is insane to me. Absolutely insane. Throw it in an asylum. Are you kidding me? Does this not tell us everything we need to know about everything? About how women are treated? Florence says that she didn't have that reaction because she saw in other women and in non-binary people that she was attracted to, she saw herself in them, in that they are multifaceted human beings, not just objects to gawk at. And for this reason, she encourages the reader to reflect on who they find attractive, their own identity, and how heteronormativity affects perception, whether you're queer or not. How does heteronormativity affect who you are? So to give you an idea of some of the questions she wants you to start asking yourself, and this is something for you to think on as you hopefully go into reading this book. Have I had queer feelings? Have I shamed myself out of them? How do the ideas of how my gender should behave affect how I actually behave? And do I judge a person and assume their personality and their sexuality just by a look, just by looking at them? These are really good questions that honestly we should ask ourselves anyway, but posed in this frame, really, really insightful. Okay, next. If it isn't hell yes, then it's hell no. And this is simply about consent. And frankly, it's self-explanatory. Now, I'm going to just leave it at this. Like, this is a major topic of the book, and this is what it boils down to. Consent. And I'm going to supplement this, though, with the fact that only once in my 25 years of life have I ever been asked, is it okay if I kiss you? My senior year of college, the first guy I'm like kind of hanging out with after I break up with my boyfriend of 4 years, he asks me, can I kiss you? Before he even touched me. And then constantly, like multiple times throughout us like hanging out, he would say, like, is this okay? Can I kiss? Are you comfortable? Like, can you imagine if that was normal? That stands out to me so much because it's not normal, but it should be. Wild. Okay. Now, content warning on this one. If you don't want to hear about themes of sexual assault, that kind of thing, I would say skip about 4 to 5 minutes, okay? This chapter and this topic is she was asking for it. Now, I think it's super important that Florence starts this chapter by saying sexual assault is never the victim's fault, because it's not. No matter what you're wearing, if you were with your nice guy friend, if someone thinks you led them on or not, the victim is not at fault. The assaulter made the choice to do something to another person. Full stop. That's it. Period. Florence makes the major point here that it should not be normal to experience discomfort or fear when you're being intimate with a partner, and that saying no or even saying nothing should be the end of a situation, right? We shouldn't just assume, oh, they didn't say nothing, so that means it's okay. They didn't say anything, so that means it's okay. Okay should not be the assumption. No should be the assumption, and okay should be what you need to be told in these kinds of situations. And, people often think that if you didn't do literally everything possible on their totally made-up checklist to get a person to stop assaulting you, then you didn't do enough and you're at fault for what another person decided to do to you. They'll say, are you sure you said no? Did they hear you say no? Well, were you dressed modestly? Did you push them off of your body that you did not invite them onto in the first place? Did you struggle against them? Are you sure you want to call it rape? And to every single one of those people, I say, fuck off. I personally know, I am no longer friends with them, but I personally know multiple rapists, and they know what they did, and other people know that they did it. But nobody ever took the girls, yes, multiple girls, who reported them seriously. So they're just living their lives. One of them was in med school, last I knew. Imagine being treated by a doctor that is a rapist. I'm sure, honestly, maybe you have. Now, if I ever saw him in a hospital, I'd tell them to wheel me out. I am not kidding. I would die before I let him treat me, because I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And, this guy in particular, he was my friend before, my good friend. And the last thing he ever said to me was, "Hey, have so much fun on your trip. I can't wait to hear about it when you get back." But then when that 18-year-old girl that I had known for much less time than him came to me and told me that she blacked out at a party and then woke up naked in his room, and she was not comfortable with that, and that she could not have consented to the things that happened to her, I believed her. I didn't interrogate her. I didn't ask her if she's sure that she said no. I believed her, and I told her that it was not her fault, because it wasn't. And he was sober, and he was the one who was responsible for what happened to her. Moving on. Women do not exist to satisfy the male gaze. Now, this is something I struggle to explain to people, and it's actually something I've been talking about a lot since I watched Birds of Prey. There is a genuine difference in how Harley Quinn is pictured in that movie, because she no longer exists to satisfy a man the way she did, for example, in Suicide Squad. Whether you liked Suicide Squad or not, I actually like it because I think it's a really fun movie. Adam doesn't love it, but I think it's super fun. And I loved Birds of Prey. But like, I mentioned that to my dad, and he was like, "Oh, I heard it was awful." And I'm like, that's because she no longer exists to satisfy a man, and she's learning to love herself and live as her own human. And people don't like that. Critics don't like that, especially because probably a lot of the critics who said, "Oh, we hate this," were, comic book mom's basement gross men. And they don't like that. They don't like a woman existing outside of what a woman can provide for a man. Or maybe they just don't understand it. But this chapter, just before I get on a rant about that, this chapter talks about how it costs about more to be a woman, both financially and emotionally. We choose where we live based on safety. Whereas boys I've known live for super cheap in terrifying areas that I wouldn't be in if not for them. I have paid way more to live in nicer, safer places so that I and my family have peace of mind. We spend money on rape alarms and pepper spray to protect ourselves from people who don't like when we say no or who don't want to ask in the first place. When a man approaches us at the bar, we tell them, "Oh, I have a boyfriend," because they respect another man's, quote, ownership of a woman before they respect a woman not being interested in them. Or maybe we give them a fake number, but the guys have caught on to that, so they call you right in front of them to catch you if you're lying. That's been done to me. And the guys that do that are so insistent, and they won't leave you alone. So you just give in and you give them your number, so you get just a little bit of damn peace of mind, or you get just a little bit of damn peace so that you and your friends can have fun. But it doesn't stop. They never leave you alone. Girl, that guy's crazy. Run away. He's not a good guy. And I mean, even razors and shaving cream that's marketed to women is more expensive when the only difference is the color pink. It's disgusting the way we pay more just to exist in this world. Now, the male gaze typically comes down to the fact that the more feminine we are, the more desirable we are. But there's a really difficult to overcome catch-22 here, because our worth is tied to our sexiness. But then at the same time, if we embrace that, then we're called whores, and we're shamed by a society who doesn't want objects to believe that they have their own worth. The male gaze is that thing that we perform for, whether we know it or not. Adam always asks me, he says, "Who are you doing that for?" And thank God at this point in my life, the honest answer is myself, like 99% of the time. But it's so crazy to me that he gets this idea without even knowing that he gets it. Like, he gets the concept of the male gaze without knowing that that's the name for it. Because he knows that women are expected to perform. Okay, we're getting close to the end, y'all. This section of the book is about dumping that person. And also how you shouldn't be expected to get married. Now, is that person good enough for you? No? Then dump them. That's it. That's the chapter in a nutshell. Florence continues in the next chapter to explain some really high-level points about marriage, such as the fact that marriage is a contract between you, a person, and the government, who has a say in whether or not you can or cannot exit this relationship, even if that relationship is causing you damage or trauma. So that's kind of crappy when you think about it in that perspective. But she's very clear that, you know, if you want to get married, go for it. She's not saying don't get married. But what she is telling us is, you know, that historically, in some traditions, not in all, a wedding is a passing of property, the bride, from father to husband, which is uncool. So there's a lot of cultural implications and societal expectations that often go along with and come from marriage. And so she's asking us, do you actually want to get married? And if you do, cool. But do you want to get married? Or is that just what you've been told that you want? Which is a really important question to ask. And I know a handful of people that if they had been asked that question, it would have saved some serious heartache and some serious money, okay? Now, this section of the book, it's a handful of chapters that which I've done in a few different places, but this major topic is about accountability. Now, this includes holding people around you accountable for shitty things that they do and say, including your racist grandma, or your misogynist uncle. I may or may not be speaking for myself. And this also includes holding yourself accountable for things that you do or things that you believe that hurt others, and asking yourself why you think that way. And this also includes understanding the privileges that you may have and how they work for you, and holding yourself accountable to make this world a better place, because there are people who don't have those privileges that you have, and those people deserve them, but they're not granted those same privileges for XYZ reason. So Florence is challenging us through this topic to hold ourselves accountable and to make this world better for others, in a sense. And I think that's a really awesome way to look at it, you know? And finally, let that shit go. Florence ends the book on this topic, that there will never be a point in your life where you are ever fully healed from something traumatic that you've experienced, whether it's an assault or a breakup, you know, different levels of trauma. But what you have to do is you have to focus on healing and growing through them, rather than distracting yourself and searching for things that just fill the void and kind of half-assedly gluing the cracks together. We have to heal. We have to open that wound enough that it gets the air that it needs to heal itself. And we have to purposefully try to heal it. We have to put the antibiotic ointment on it. You know, we can't just let it fester. Because if not, then, like, if we don't let ourselves heal and address these problems, then that's how maybe we go into these awful self-destructive spirals, Or that's why we end up in these situations that we don't enjoy, because we never allowed ourselves to grow from the trauma. So we just kind of floated along, not really knowing, not really addressing life, just letting things happen to us versus growing through it and setting boundaries and all of those things that we need to do. And going along with this, we have to keep in mind that people don't always like it when we grow. Like Florence poses in the very beginning of the book, when she's talking about loving yourself and that kind of growth, you might lose people along the way. There might be people who don't like that you stop existing to please others and you start existing to please yourself. I've had that happen. But if those people aren't excited for you and helping you grow, then they're not your friend and they don't care about you, and you need to say adios. Everyone has things that they need to heal from. And the perspective that you need to retain as you go through this is this. Imagine the past versions of yourself. How broken they were, how they cried at the bar bathroom, how they were bullied maybe, or maybe how they almost gave up on life completely. All of those versions of you are so happy to see how you've pulled through and so proud to see how much you've grown since then. Make the past versions of you that needed the person that you were becoming, make them proud. Become the person that they needed. Y'all, I cannot say enough how much I've enjoyed this book. I mean, like I said, I am planning on gifting this to my mom and my cousin when it becomes available in the US. You can get it still shipped to the US from the UK like I did, but I highly recommend it. And honestly, I think I started saying this at the beginning of the episode. There are a lot of reviews out there talking about the book and how it's not, groundbreaking feminist theory, blah, 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 blah. How it's, high level. Even talking negatively about how Florence talks a lot about her own personal experiences. But her personal experiences, a lot of that is what made the book relatable to me and is what gave it credibility. So I don't know what those people think, but I really enjoyed this. And again, I really think that this is an awesome segue. Buy it for your boyfriend. I mean, I'm going to have Adam read this. Buy it for your cousin who has had multiple failed relationships. Buy it for your mom who's scared of the F word, feminism. I mean, there are a lot of people who need to hear the things that are said in this book. And I think that it can break down a whole lot of walls that we have built for ourselves. Guys, I so hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen. Check out our Patreon. I've been thinking pod. There's a link to it on the website and also on the Instagram. Make sure that you subscribe for early and extra content and to support the podcast. Check out the website, I'veBeenThinkingPod.com, for today's blog post about this episode. And make sure that you follow along on Instagram at I'veBeenThinkingPod. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I love you all. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will talk at you next week. Bye.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.